Hey guys, and welcome back to Z3 Cubing. Today I'm going to attempt to make the new world's lightest Rubik's Cube out of nothing but paper. Earlier this year, I went on a bit of a journey to create the lightest possible, standard-sized 3x3 Rubik's Cube. While your standard Rubik's brand might weigh over 100 grams, I actually took one of the lightest magnetic speed cubes on the market at just 65 grams and turned it into this ridiculously light but fully functional Rubik's Cube at just 26 grams. But I wasn't done yet. I then decided to go beyond the realm of plastic cubes when I found a template to create a paper Rubik's Cube, which beat my personal record at an impressive 19.8 grams. Now yes, this thing is made out of nothing but paper and a little bit of glue, and it is, in theory, fully functional. Although in practice, it tends to lock up pretty much every half turn, and it was so bad that I never actually did a solve, because I figured it would take probably 10 minutes just to scramble it, plus maybe another half hour to actually fix all the lockups and complete a full solve. In short, it was a very light Rubik's Cube, but not a great cubing experience. So my goal for this video is to create a new Rubik's Cube out of paper that not only is a lot lighter than all the ones that have come before, but also turns much better than our previous attempt, so that hopefully, by the end of this video, I will complete my first paper Rubik's Cube solve. Okay, that all sounds good in theory, but how do we create a paper Rubik's Cube that's both lighter and turns better than the one we made before? Well, in short, we use a better template. Now, I found this design basically by clicking on the first result for a paper cube tutorial on YouTube. But since then, I've actually found what I believe to be a much better design, made by someone who seems to be the go-to expert on paper twisty puzzles. His name is Papercuber. I'll link his channel down below, and you should definitely go check it out. It's super impressive. He's made dozens of puzzles ranging from a Mastermorphix to a 5x5. Yes, a fully functional 5x5. It's hard to overstate how crazy that is, made out of nothing but paper. So I figure, if I want the best chance at making a great paper 3x3, then this is the guy to go to. I'll also link his tutorial for where you can make this cube and find the templates also in the description. Now what makes this template so much better than the one I used before is not only a much simpler core, but also what appears to be a totally custom designed edge and corner piece mechanism, far from the Rubik's brand looking mechanism of this one. And not only will this make the cube turn better, but it also means that each edge and corner is just one single folded piece, which will be way easier to cut and glue than the multi-part design of this cube. And it'll also make the cube lighter overall, because you're using the paper more efficiently, so you need less of it. Now I did make one little aesthetic change to his template. Originally the colors of the pieces were all completely borderless, kind of like a stickerless cube, whereas I really like the stickered look with the black borders, so I added those onto the template before printing it out, as well as some black internals. Hopefully that'll just make it look a little bit nicer. Now his video also taught me a couple of other things. For one, I was kind of under the impression that there were only really two types of paper. This flimsy printer paper, which I learned has a weight of 75 grams per square meter, but is clearly not strong enough to make a paper cube out of, or this super heavy duty cardstock, which is actually 200 grams per square meter, which is why I use that to make this cube. But what Papercuber recommended was actually using paper in the range of 120 to 150 grams per square meter, which I hardly knew existed, but is a lot lighter than this stuff, and that's obviously going to help us create a much lighter paper Rubik's Cube. So I went ahead and looked for something on the lower end of his range. I eventually settled on something in the 110s, which might be just a little bit too flimsy, but I'm willing to take that risk for the sake of weight. So, compared to our previous paper cube, we're actually starting with fewer pieces of paper, and each one weighs close to half the amount. I'm not saying that 10 grams is going to be possible, but we're going to be pretty close. Maybe sub 12 will be our goal. This is going to be one light cube. Now, two more really quick things I learned from Papercuber's video. For one, scissors are probably a lot faster and easier to use than the X-Acto knife I used last time, which is very slow and needlessly precise. And also, super glue is a lot faster and probably stronger too than the Elmer's glue that I used last time, so I'll probably end up using this as well. Anyway, I think that's probably more than anyone ever wanted to know about paper, so let's go ahead and get started with the time lapse. Alright, that was a lot of work. I think just like last time I made one of these, I managed to overestimate how long the cutting would take. The scissors were very nice, by the way. I'm glad I used them. And severely underestimate how long the folding and gluing would take. I think I spent somewhere in the range of 4 or 5 hours just on that last step, which is similar, if not more, than it took me last time. Using super glue didn't help as much as I thought it would, and it was altogether a totally different experience from using regular old glue. The biggest difference between these two, of course, is just speed. With this stuff, you do have to hold the pieces together after putting the glue on for 10 or 15 seconds before the bond will be super strong. Whereas with super glue, everything will be totally stuck together within 1 or 2 seconds, and that oftentimes includes all of your fingers, and then you'll have to painstakingly pry your fingers off without ripping any of the paper, which oftentimes leads to you losing a little bit of skin. Really, it's just not fun to work with. You also end up with it all over your hands by the end, and honestly, I'm not sure if it really saves that much time. In the future, I would probably use this for any small, precise paper gluing. Anyway, there was also one more quick step at the very end that I didn't film, and that was sanding down all the sharp corners. You can actually see it here. The internal parts look very rounded. That was all because of sanding. It sounds a little bit crazy to use sandpaper on paper, but it turns out that once it's all tightly folded and glued together, it's actually plenty rigid enough to be sanded down. I also definitely did notice the thinner paper that I used, but it wasn't that much of a problem. It was a little bit harder to work with, but I didn't really notice any durability issues. Also, here is the core. It's a pretty impressive, compact little design with all the centers, of course, being able to spin. But without further ado, let's get it put together and see how it turns. Or if it turns, if it's anything like the last one. Hopefully it'll turn a little bit better than that one. But as you can see, the pieces go in just like a normal Rubik's Cube. And here's what it looks like with just one corner section assembled. It really is one impressive little design. Okay, now let's get the rest of it assembled. And the last piece. And there we go. Fit in nice and easily. Let's try out our first half turn. Okay, that's actually pretty promising. You know what? Until I'm holding this in my hands totally assembled, it didn't strike me just how incredibly light this thing is. Like, even compared to my last paper cube, this thing feels so heavy in comparison, easily double the weight compared to the plastic cube. Ugh, this thing is just a feather. I'm gonna say it. I think we probably made it under 12 grams. And you know what? We might even have a chance at 10. But before we check that out, let's check out the arguably more important thing, the turning. Let's start off with the classic checkerboard test. So let's do our real first turn here. And hey, that's not too bad. It's a little bit locky. That piece is trying to pop out, but as long as we're careful, I think we can get a pretty easy double turn in here. Yeah, that wasn't too bad. How about the other side? Yeah, this is definitely a little bit better than the last paper cube that I made. It's definitely a lot looser, which I think helps. The pieces are just able to slide past each other a little bit easier. Ooh, that turn's going pretty easily. It's definitely far from perfect. It definitely turns a lot worse than the one he made in this video, but you know, I am a paper cuber amateur. You can see just from the outside of the cube that not all of my folds were super precise. Part of that was because of the super glue not giving me enough time. All the pieces are a little bit wobbly, a little bit offset, but that's kind of what you have to expect for a paper cube. And there was our checkerboard. That was easily less than a minute, so a lot better than our last paper cube. So you know what that means. It's time to scramble this thing up and try out my first ever paper cube solve. Let's get scrambling. All right, I think that scramble is good enough, so let's go ahead and start some inspection. So we got our cross pieces in the front here, one in the back, and you know what? I'll have plenty of time to inspect while I'm doing the solve. 3, 2, 1, go. There we go. First piece into the bottom layer, second piece into the bottom layer, align the cross, and then get the last two in there. And there we go. I think that was like a sub 30 cross. That's actually pretty good. Okay, I for some reason just decided to do like the highest move count F2L algorithm for that first F2L pair. So yeah, let's try and do something more efficient next time. Okay, second F2L pair in there. This one looks like a lot of moves. This one looks a little bit easier. Oh, and then we have to do the same F2L pair anyway. So let's go ahead and get started with that last one. All right, done with F2L. This is actually going by a little bit quicker than I thought. And we got a super easy OLL too, yes. And done with OLL. Now let's see, what's our PLL? Oh gosh, it's an R perm. That's like one of the longest ones. Here we go. And here we go, last couple of moves. There we go. And the final one, will it lock up? Of course it's locking up. There we go. There is our first ever paper cube solve. That was amazing. Even though the turning is pretty bad, it is still infinitely better than this guy, which took like 10 minutes just to do a checkerboard pattern. Whereas this one, the turning is just so much better. Part of it is that the mechanism is just so much looser, so it allows a lot more free space for the pieces to move against each other. And yeah, that was actually a pretty good solve. I'm actually surprised it only took me like 10 minutes. But speaking of under 10, have we created a fully functional Rubik's Cube that is under 10 grams? Honestly, I kind of doubt it. I think it's going to be more like 10 or 11. But just for reference, one more time, the last paper cube we made came in at an impressive under 20 grams, which felt very light in the moment. But keep in mind that we used heavier paper and much more of it to make this cube. Whereas this one, it weighs 10.1 grams. Okay, that's hilarious. It's honestly lighter than I thought it would be, but it's just so stupidly close to the magical number of 10 that, honestly, I mean, I'm going to start sanding down pieces right here and now. Okay, so I actually just went back through and sanded down all the corner pieces again in the spot that I think was most contributing to that catching issue, so hopefully the turning should be a little bit better now. But more importantly, let's check out the final weight of this cube. We now have 9.99. That is unbelievable. It literally could not be closer. As crazy as it is, we have finally made a Rubik's Cube that is not only made completely out of paper, not only is completely fully functional, but it also weighs less than 10 grams. That is literally less than 1/10 of a Rubik's brand. That is just incredible. Anyway, yeah, I think this might actually be the world's lightest standard size Rubik's Cube. If anybody knows of a lighter one that's not tiny like this one, then definitely let me know because I would be very interested. But it's certainly the lightest one I've heard of by a factor of 2, and I'm really glad this new design worked out. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know down in the comments what other kind of crazy cubes like this you want me to make in the future, like maybe revisiting the heaviest standard size cube. Let me know. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.